welcome to a quick, not terribly long. For some of you, it's a refresher class. For some of you, I bet you're long-term gardeners, and you're hoping to maybe get a new idea or two, because there's always different ways of doing things. And sometimes as we get older, it's less desirable to be out in the garden plot, doing this, and this, and this. So we get creative for other ways. Maybe where our son is not a great place to plow a garden, but maybe it's a great place to put some containers, or some straw bales, or some raised box beds. Just as a side note, we received a $3,000 grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we have just ordered raised box beds, a 3-tiered, several that are like this, and we've contracted with somebody to put them together, because I'm not really good with tools, and bring us the dirt in. We'll be getting plants and be doing a garden to donate vegetables. Hopefully, we'll be successful.
Where are they going to be placed?
They're going to be over here off the little parking lot. We get good 6 hours of sun over there. So we'll be doing that there. So keep an eye out for that. You're welcome to come look. You're welcome to help. When we get it going, it's going to be fun. We hope to grow it every year. Maybe add some more boxes. We'll see what's happening. So I'm Maynell Harper. This is Tiffany Witt. Tiffany is going to start off talking about container gardening. I'm going to go get my copies.
All right, so I have a couple of handouts here. If y'all could just take one and pass it around. And then I'm just going to kind of read off some information about container gardening. Who's tried container gardening before?
Yeah, I put them in the pot.
Just put them in the pots, right? Yeah. So, container gardening is great because you get to choose what you want to grow in. So, the very first part of container gardening is choosing your container. We got enough? We good?
I think so.
Okay. So, best part is choosing your container. The most important part of choosing a container is making sure that you have enough drain holes. I was about to say, I'll get some more copies printed out. We're missing?
What's that now?
All right, do we have enough?
Three. Oh, I
So
don't
we
know.
need 2,
Hold on a minute.
3, 2.
You need one? Everybody that needs a handout, raise your hand.
It's okay, it's okay. So I'm just gonna kind of still read along. Give me a moment and I will get that handout to you when it's Maynell's turn. So the most important part of container gardening is choosing a container that has a drain hole, or it has a material that you can put a drain hole in. Now, the reason why we need those drain holes is because if we don't, all that water is gonna pool at the bottom. It's gonna get stagnant, and then that's gonna lead to things like bacterial diseases, root rot. Also, not every plant likes to have what we call wet feet. A lot of them don't. They prefer to have some well-draining soil. Also, the beauty of container gardening is you can grow plants from different regions right beside each other. So I can have my little hen and chick succulents. I modified their soil so it's nice and well-draining for them, but then I have them right beside my peppermint, which needs a little bit more moist soil. So that's the beauty of container gardening. You know, all different plants have different moisture needs. When we get into moisture needs, terracotta containers are clay containers. They are porous, and so that means the water is going to seep into those containers and evaporate out the sides faster. That can be a plus or a negative depending on what your plant's needs are. That also works in reverse. So if you take your little terracotta planter and maybe keep it in a saucer of water, that planter is going to absorb the water and keep the moisture in a little bit longer.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is a terracotta planter the one with all the different holes on each side?
No, it is those orange,
Oh, the big orange ones, okay.
the big orange ones made out of clay that are breakable.
Right,
Yes.
okay,
The more traditional container that we're used to seeing.
Right.
You can also use wood. A lot of people have chopped off whiskey barrels or other wooden barrels. So that doesn't take away the moisture as fast as terracotta, but it does allow for some of that moisture to wick away. So it's important you know the moisture needs of your plant. So when you get into that, that brings us to point 2, picking your soil wisely. So some plants are, when they're started, you want just a regular old topsoil without any fertilizer, because otherwise that fertilizer will burn those new starting roots. So you just want something, just a basic mix without any fertilizer. The mix of soil, perlite, peat moss, and sand will depend on the plant you want to grow. So, perlite. Does anybody know what perlite is? So it's those little white rocks that we find in our soil mix all the time. That's perlite. That is a volcanic rock that they chop up into bits. You add it to your soil to increase aeration so that those roots can get through the soil and it's not so tightly packed. And it also increases the drainage ability. So you add some rocks in there, the rocks soak up some of that water, and it also helps give it some air and some space so it can drain out the bottom. So sand also increases your drainage ability. So if you have something like succulents, they're a desert plant. They really want to be dry with only a deep watering every once in a while. So most of that's just going to be a little bit of topsoil, some sand, and some perlite. That's going to be like your basic cactus or succulent mix. So that all increases the drainage ability and allows those roots to stay nice and dry where they prefer. Meanwhile, you have some plants, for example, Venus flytraps. Did anybody know Venus flytraps are actually native to North Carolina? So they prefer nice, moist soil, so I have to add a lot of peat moss when I'm trying to grow Venus flytraps. Peat moss helps increase the moisture retention in your soil, so it helps it stay a little bit moister for longer. You can find basic soil mixes at any box store, your local Lowe's, Walmart, etc. So the fun really begins in choosing your plants. So if you want the most bang for your buck, invest in perennials. Perennials come back every year, meaning you won't have to purchase new plants every spring. Annuals die at the end of their growing season. However, that doesn't mean they're not fun, and there are plenty of annuals that actually kind of reseed themselves. So it all depends on the plant and what you're looking for. Some perennials that are very hardy and virtually impossible to kill. Primroses, daffodils, lungwort, aster, bleeding heart, snapdragons. If we have a really rough winter, those snapdragons will act as an annual, unfortunately. Flowering kale and cabbage. So, also, all of these plants here, my little mints, I made by simply snipping off a little cutting, rooting them in water. So, if you have somebody, maybe they've already got some of oregano or local herbs. Herbs are really good and easy to propagate in water. Maybe you can ask, hey, I see you have a beautiful basil plant over there. Can I have just like a little snippet, little clip? Put that in some water, put that in your little windowsill, let that root Now you've got a free plant, and all it took was a little cutting from your friend, right? So, let's go over some edible plants. Most of my garden is actually a tea and herb garden. So, many herbs are best grown in containers. For example, all the ones I have here are in the mint family. If you put mint in the ground, it will take over everything. It will take over.
Invasive.
Invasive, incredibly invasive. And all mint derivatives are like that. So they actually perform best in containers. Some other great list of really easy to grow herbs. Oregano. Oregano is kind of similar to mint. It really just gets it going. Chamomile. That is a flowering tea. Now, what I like about chamomile is even though it is an annual, it really reseeds itself very easy. If you let some of those flowers go to seed, you won't have an issue with it coming back next year. Sage, chives, spearmint, and pansies. And they're also
come back?
No. And pansies do not do well once warm, hot weather hits. They will wither away. That's why you see people planting them in the winter, so they can have some flowers and colors. But once it gets really hot, pansies are like,
That's why they cost them $1 right now.
yes, that's why they
Yes.
cost $1 right now.
yes, absolutely.
Save your money.
So, another beautiful thing that kind of Maynell touched on is one of the wonderful things about container gardening is you can move it to where the sun is best for it. So, when you were gardening in ground, who's ever kind of picked a bad spot for their plant and you stuck it in the ground and now it's stuck there? And a couple months go by and you're like, oh, that looks kind of yellow and wilty and that's not getting enough sun. And I really wish I had picked this spot over there. With in-ground gardening, you can risk it and kind of cut it up and try to take it up out of the ground, but you risk losing that plant. With container gardening, you just get to move it over here to where the sun's best. Does anyone have any questions about growing in a container? All right.
When it comes to containers, I'm just gonna be straight up with you, size does matter.
It does, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I got a question about
Yes.
that. Okay, these little containers like tomato plants
Mm-hmm.
or the other plants, I know that they need to grow, but what you can do with those is put it on a big container, leave that in there and just cut your plastic from around it and put it in the dirt in the pot.
So, most
Most of those need to be in the dirt though, don't they?
yeah, they need to be in the dirt and they need to be in a large container. I'm
That's
growing
right. I
tomatoes
agree.
in containers now.
Right.
So you're gonna kind of pop it out
Right.
and
Oh, that's right. Leave
yeah,
it
pop
alone.
it in your hand
That's right, I forgot.
and then put it in the soil.
That's right.
Because if you keep these intact,
Right. They
these are
sweat
good for you
and
next
just-
year to start your seedlings with seeds in them. Just stack them up, put them
Right.
aside, and you've got them for next year, or this summer if you're gonna start some fall vegetables.
I was about to say, that's exactly where all these came, is they were other plants that I just saved my little starter.
Right.
You know, Diane and I save our eggshells,
Yes,
Yes,
and we use the eggshell,
that's,
to do,
you
you
crack it so
can,
that you've got bigger end.
you can
and then
save
put it back in
eggshells
the
to actually plant, and then you can just put
Yeah,
the
some
whole
dirt
thing
in
in the
that
dirt.
eggshell, and put your seed in there, and then when it comes time to put it in the garden, just crack the bottom of the shell so that the roots of the plant can get out into the
Right.
dirt.
and I love that idea because also that eggshell is gonna add some calcium needed for the plants when it eventually does break down.
Diane taught me that trick.
And you can save those eggshells for so many things. You ever get blossom end rot in your tomatoes,
Yep.
sometimes your squash
Yeah,
too?
do that.
You know, I save all my eggshells, crush them up, I put them in water, then I pour them, the eggshells in the water around my tomato plants. Banana peels, same thing.
Tried that banana peel.
Banana peels, same thing. The potassium, they like it. So, I mean, there's lots of natural ways to look at it and do it. The thing with container gardening is Think about how big your plant's going to be, how big you would want it to get, what its purpose is. If its purpose is to grow tomatoes, then this is not gonna work for you. You wanna put it in a big container, It needs to spread out, get roots, and it needs to go high. If you're just looking for some little flowers, this is fine. But if you're gonna try to grow vegetables or something, you need a bigger one. I should have brought a picture. I like to grow stuff out of ends of fruits and vegetables. So pineapples, you cut the top off.
Right.
I do not do anything scientifically. I have 2 big pots about like this. I cut the tops off, stick it in there, and it grows. I have 3 pots. Last summer I got 8 pineapples. It takes 2 to 3 years to get your pineapples, and they only get about this big. They are so good. They are so good. So yes, I fertilize them 2 or 3 times, and it'll surprise you. All of a sudden you'll see this tiny pineapple. And when it gets to be about this big, it bursts out in flowers all over it, little pinky red flowers all over it. It's really pretty. Then they'll fall off and it really starts growing. And you keep it on there till it's all but golden brown. And it's really, really good. But you grew it out of something you might have just thrown in the compost pile or the garbage. Another thing, celery. When you buy hearts of celery, cut it off. Now again, I don't do anything scientifically. I take my pot, stick it in there, bottom end in, don't cover it all the top. It grows celery. Is it gonna get big stalks like that? No. Is it gonna be about like this? Yes. Does it have 10 times the flavor as what you buy in the grocery store? Yes. Carrots, same thing. You're not gonna get a great big carrot in the ground, you're gonna get the carrot greens, which have a very strong carrot flavor. So there are ways to propagate using odds and ends from your kitchen when you're cooking. Tiff talked about just snipping a piece off, breaking a piece off. How many of you like to plant coleus in the summer? They're leafy. They send up the shoot with the little purple flowers usually, which I just pinch off because I don't like them. But the thing about coleus is, go to a joint, snap it off, stick it in the dirt. It grows. That's what I do. The ones I really liked over the summer, because I have a lot of shade, I pick off about 10. I have a long skinny planter. Doop, 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 doop. In the summer, next spring, I don't have to buy any coleus because I've got them already started. I believe in gardening on the cheap side. Yes. That's the whole point. If you spend $300 to get 10 tomatoes, you may have enjoyed yourself till you balance your checkbook, and then it's not so much fun anymore. So don't be that joke. Don't be that meme of the person that spends $300 to get 10 tomatoes. Don't be that person.
How do you keep the coleus over the winter?
I had 3 children, and none of them live with me anymore, so I turned one of them's bedroom into my winter plant room. Because it's got a big window. So I just moved the bed to the side, and I put shelves, and I bring in probably 50 plants, and they're just on shelves. I put them on a low water regimen where I don't water them that much because I really don't necessarily want them growing. I just want them to live. Back behind where it's dark, I put all my geraniums. I pinch them down somewhat, and I only water them maybe once every 4 or 5 weeks and just a little bit. Geraniums, I've got geraniums that are 10, 15 years old.
You know, I do that with my green peppers every
Yes.
fall.
Mm-hmm.
I dig them up out of the garden,
Yeah.
and then I put them in big pots, and I put them in my greenhouse for the winter. They go dormant,
Mm-hmm.
and then they start waking back up, and
That's
then I
right.
jump on big pepper plants,
Mm-hmm.
and then I put them back out in the garden.
So you don't have to get rid of everything if you've got just a little space. And even geraniums, some people put them underneath their house or, you know, in a shed. They don't have to have light. You don't have to water them so much. We've got, you know, it's just easy to try to keep things. And just experiment, you know, try one and see what happens. If it doesn't work, you lost one plant. No big deal.
What you do with the Christmas plant?
Poinsettias,
Yeah.
you can keep those. We got some back there that are really leggy, but what you should do is about 3 or 4 months before Christmas, you want them to go dormant, you put them in a very dark room. And then supposedly when you bring out, they go back to red leaves. I've had maybe like 1 out of 20 go back to red leaves, so I'm not doing something right, obviously. But you know, they're only like $5.99. They're seasonal. Tiff?
I was about to say that's mostly all I've got. I was gonna do just a quick explanation of fertilizer. So most of your standard fertilizer is gonna have 3 numbers: NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So there's a little rhyme. It goes top, down, and all around. What that means is that first number, that's for the top. That's your nitrogen. That is what makes the plant so nice and green and leafy and bushy. That second number, that is your phosphorus. That is going to be for the root system. So that's got top, that's the down. And then potassium helps protect, like it does us, helps protect from diseases and helps make the plant just stronger overall, and that's why it's overall. Using those numbers, you can kind of pinpoint some issues or customize your fertilizer to match your plant's needs. Just telling a story. Last year I had a tomato plant. It grew and grew and grew and grew. I never got any fruit. It was beautiful, bushy, nice and green. Never got any fruit. No flowers. I've been using high nitrogen plant food on it. Didn't develop its roots well enough. So while it was a beautiful plant, just a beautiful vine out here, wasn't doing exactly what I wanted, and that's because I didn't follow those numbers.
What should you have done?
I should have used a more balanced fertilizer. So the fertilizer I used was all nitrogen, and so my roots didn't have anything. So I used, I think it was like a 10-0-0, and I should have used something like a 5-5-5. Once again, that's those 3 numbers that are listed on your fertilizer. NPK, top, down, all around. That's how I have to remember it. All right, I'm gonna hand it off to Miss Maynell.
Everybody will just take one and pass it around. So we did this class 2018 and 2019. Mr. Shotwell leading it because he was our straw bale gardener. I forgot one. And I actually have a straw bale out there that we're going to show you what to do. And I will say, Tiff just talked about fertilizer, so I'm going to tell you the opposite for what I'm going to do. So we'll give credit to Don Shotwell, although he did not make this packet. I had to make it for him. But with so many ways to garden, why use straw bales? Why not use containers? You could. Why not till up your yard? You could. What are the advantages of straw bale gardening? Well, it's the ability to garden in locations that may have contaminated or unsuitable soils. Does anybody here ever take their garden soil to Cooperative Extension and get it tested? So you know sometimes you may have to not use that particular area for a while. It may be contaminated with a fungus. It may be full of squash beetle larvae, different things.
Pure clay, nothing's gonna grow.
Yeah, clay. We have a lot of clay around here.
Move on to raised beds.
So you can use straw bales anywhere. You could use them on a paved surface. You could put weed fabric down, newspaper, cardboard to set them on. Fewer weeds are in straw bale gardening with soil-based gardens. And actually, the biggest thing you might get close to a weed in a straw bale garden is some wheat straw, coming up. And it just adds to the ambiance, I think. It's elevated beds, so instead of doing this, you're just doing this, or maybe this, because some of that stuff gets good. Straw bales are easy to transport and acquire than bulk compost that some gardeners use. They used to be pretty cheap. I think they're selling for like $6 a bale now. But let me just say this. When you're finished with your garden in the fall or late fall, you can reuse that straw. It becomes almost compost. And you can use it around plants to help them winter. So you can use it twice. You're not tilling up. And the biggest thing about straw bale is the heat we're gonna generate. It's gonna add seed germination and plant growth. So how do we get this out of straw bales? How do we get this? This year, he got tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. He had 4 kinds of squash. He had 2 kinds of zucchini. He had 2 kinds of green beans. He had peas. He had watermelon. He had flowers. All in his straw bales. Cucumbers. So first you need to decide where you're going to put your straw bales. You want 6 hours of sun, like any garden. How many do you need? How are you going to arrange them? You can see here on this, he had 2, but this particular one was 2 long rows with a space in the middle, and he did put down a cloth. So it depends upon the plant, but you're going to figure 2 to 3 plants per straw bale. I usually recommend just 2 plants, because you want to give them plenty of room. So once you've figured out your configuration and the area of your placement, comes the most important part. It's trying to condition your straw bales. You can't just plant stuff in a straw bale. You have to get it ready first. So I'm going to go ahead and pass these out now. These are materials lists. They're in both places, but I just wanted to pull it out separately for you. So the first day, you're getting ready. This is like a 12-day process. You're going to sprinkle the top of each bale with about a half a cup of a high nitrogen fertilizer. Then you're going to water the straw bales until they're saturated. Second day, you just water. Third day, you fertilize and water. Fourth day, you water. Every other day, you fertilize and water. Every other day, you just water. Now, we talked about high nitrogen. Why would we want high nitrogen? And what I usually use to start my straw bales is 3400, because we want to heat it up in a hurry.
Is what?
3400. High nitrogen. I'm not going to use that once my garden gets going, but I'm going to use it to heat my straw bales up, because heat helps things germinate and develop strong root systems. So, how will you know when it's ready? Well, you could stick a thermometer in there. I've never done that. At the end of 12 days, my thing that tells me my straw bales are ready, sometimes it takes a few days more, some days it happens a little early, are these cute little thin little stem brown mushrooms that come up in it. I know then my straw bales have heated up because the little mushrooms are growing.
It says on day 1, is to sprinkle with a high nitrogen fertilizer. And then on day 3, a half cup of fertilizer. Is that still the high nitrogen?
Yes, you're going
All
to use
these
the same
steps are
fertilizer. You're going to use the high nitrogen the
All
whole
the way
entire.
to day 10 and then go to a balance.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well, yeah. Then I usually go to like a 10-10-10 or something like that.
great.
Yes. Thank you. On the 11th day, you want to just kind of leave it alone and see what happens. The 12th day, you should be ready to plant. Now, nature is not scientific sometimes. So it may take 14 or 15 days. You may feel like it's ready a little bit earlier. But always, I say, go for 12 days and assess the situation. If you don't feel like it's heated up enough, if you don't feel like you've got the little mushrooms coming up, or you see a little wheat straw starting to germinate, those are your signs that your straw bales are ready to go.
So Maynell, you're doing this yourself, you do this?
I've done it for 8 years
When
now.
do you generally start prepping your bales?
I usually start the 1st of May.
Okay,
First week of May, it might be the end of the 1st, but somewhere in there. Because my father taught me you shouldn't plant anything until second week of May, Mother's Day. Right, Diane? Exactly. Now, I do plant other things faster, particularly in containers that I can move close to the house, because as our weather has shown, we have schizophrenic weather in North Carolina. It could be winter one day, it could be spring, it could be summer, it could be winter. Right, exactly. The next page is just showing you his cabbage patch, because he did his in his spring garden, a summer garden, and a fall garden. So I just want you to know, there's really nothing you can't grow in straw bales.
So after you pull those cabbages out, can you go ahead and put in summer plants in that same bale?
You can, yes. You probably want to add, and I'm going to show you, you don't have to add any dirt, but I always add a couple shovelfuls in there. So in the beginning, shows his little bitty plants as they're growing. Weed free, no weeds, because he's got the cloth down. This next picture, you can see everything's starting to grow. He's put stakes in. You can use tomato cages. For beans, what I do, and I know he's done it, I put stakes at the end and just run my string twine up, and they just like a normal garden. There's nothing you can't do in a, you guys straw bale garden, and you straw bale, yeah. Not now. So you see the next picture, you can see where he's run his strings. How big those tomato plants are. Now you will continue to fertilize just like you would with any other garden periodically. You will continue to water.
Yeah, I see it's old.
With any garden, I believe in planting flowers in the garden, alongside the garden. Who knows why I would do that? It does help with bug control, but also it helps pollinate. Because the bees will go from the flowers to the vegetable blooms and keep everything going. Sometimes bees and other pollinators are not necessarily going to come straight to a vegetable garden. But if you got flowers in there, they will. They're like, oh, this petunia is so good. Ooh, look at that squash bloom. But it gets them there and gets them going, because pollination, as you well know, is critical. Of course, he had to include a picture of himself in his garden. Here is a bag full of cucumbers and tomatoes. We're going to get into the logistics. We'll go outside. So, are you ready to start your straw bale garden? Remember, it's relatively easy on your back and the pocket. You use less space. And there's always different ways to do something new. Do something old in a new way. You never want to stop learning. So the thing with straw bales, you got the materials list. Straw bales, one for every 2 to 3 plants, although I personally recommend 2 plants per straw bale. You can put ground cover. You don't have to, but then you're going to have stuff coming up. So you could use landscape cloth. You could use newspapers. You could use cardboard, newspapers with cardboard on top of it. You could put your straw bales on pavement. I have a friend that does 3 every year. She gets her 2 tomatoes, her 2 peppers, and her 2 cucumbers. Just like, she's in a rut. But she puts it on her patio where it gets lots of sun, and she gets everything she needs, and she even makes pickles. So she's doing pretty well. You want to start with that high nitrogen fertilizer. If you do want to use insect spray, I recommend, if you can, go organic, because you don't want to put a lot of poison in anything. Anybody ever use neem oil to get rid of buggies on your plants? You want your plants, you can start seeds. I recommend go ahead and start your seeds in something like this and transplant, because if you put seeds in the straw bale garden, sometimes you're just not sure what's coming up. And you've wasted 2 weeks on a weed. But it might be a pretty weed, so that's okay. And then you need water and sunshine. So, come with me. I'm going outside. I'm not taking you in the rain, I promise. We're going to read it. Exactly. Absolutely. Feels about like a half cup. So you just want to spread it throughout. And then, like when you're making a cake and you're adding the flavor, you say, oh, maybe a little bit more wouldn't hurt. It's like when you cook with garlic, right?
Yes.
What is it Chef Tiff says? Follow your heart. So we put our, you don't have to work it in or anything. Then we would bring our hose over here and we would saturate it. And it does take a while at first, the first time you water, because it's thirsty. Because this is dried straw. And we're gonna, and I do recommend keeping this on it. You know why? Exactly. You wanna keep that on there. So you're gonna water it until literally you can't see the fertilizer anymore. Once it's melted in there, you're done. The next day, you're just gonna water. Then the third day, you're gonna put that handful in and water. Now let's pretend like we've let it heat up and we're gonna plant. So what I do is I go in with a shovel.
Oh, okay.
My hands aren't as strong as they used to be. And once it's heated up, this is really easy to do because it's warm and wet and mushy. Anyhow, you're gonna dig out as much as you want. We'll just pretend that's where I want it to be. You can go in there, even now it's not bad. And then what I always do is just get garden soil. You can get container soil, but I just get for in-ground use.
Garden soil, can y'all see it? You're not gonna open something.
Doesn't have to be Miracle Grow. It was on sale, so I bought some. Just slit it, and then I'm gonna put a couple of handfuls of the Miracle Grow soil in there, and I'm just gonna take my hand and mix it in there. Not much, it does not take much. Sound effects. Then you're gonna take your plant out, just like you would with anything, loosen the roots a little bit. You're gonna put it in there, and then you're gonna take your straw and just put it around it. You may want to go ahead and water it, depending on how moist it feels. And then you let the sunshine take over. It's that easy. When you're heating your straw bales up, like I said, you may see these little mushrooms coming here. They're like piece of yarn, thick, sort of a off-white, and then they're sort of like a tanny brown. They're really cute little mushrooms, very thin. That is like the oven timer going off. Ding, 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 ding. It's ready, it's ready, it's ready. If you've got it hot enough for them to grow, you're good. And they won't hurt anything. In fact, once it gets hot during the day, they go away. And they may come back in your garden. It's okay. They don't hurt anything. In my opinion, they just add to what organic mix you've got going in there. They're like earthworms because they break down and add to the goodness. Any questions? Where can you get straw bales? You can get them at nurseries, Southern States. Sometimes you can go to large-scale farmers. They will sell them. Usually it's cheaper there.
Where? Where was that?
Large-scale farmers.
Oh.
If you know someone that, cuts and bales straw or hay, and let me just say, do not get hay bales.
Right.
Do not get hay bales. You do not want hay bales. You want straw. There's a big difference. Big difference. Straw bales. Do not get hay bales. Only straw bales. I had some lady one time get hay bales, and it just was not good.
You get grass and everything, didn't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, but it's not going to give the plants what they need like the straw. The straw is a conductor. That's all it is. The straw is a container and a conductor. The hay is like a living being. And we don't want that. Plus, it would get much more hotter. I mean, you don't want it. It would fry your plants. So always get straw. Make sure you get straw. They're not heavy now, but guess what's going to happen after we saturate them? So make sure you have them where you want them when you start, because they get really heavy once we saturate them with water and fertilizer. We put the plants in them. But by the end of the 12 days, just for fun, you can say, they are saturated and heavy. So make sure you put them where you're planning on keeping them. Don't think you're gonna heat them up and then move them someplace else. No. Put them where you want them right from the get-go. Any questions?
If you tested with a thermometer, what degrees do you
I have to look that up. It's been so long. The first year I did it, I tried to follow the rules. But I will look that up and put that on Facebook.
He
put that
had
out there.
one in there. and
He
it
had one in there.
registered 80.
Yeah.
A little over 80 or something.
Yeah, you're looking for 80 to 100 degrees somewhere in there. But I just go by my mushrooms and the time. I have had some years where it wasn't, the weather got like this. We didn't have a lot of sunshine and it got fairly cold at night. So it took longer. It took about 4 days longer. But if the weather is regular spring, late spring weather, got some sunshine, 12 days usually does it.
Those
Pretty good.
extra days you don't do anything.
Those extra days, I let it rest on the 11th. If I figure that it's not going to do anything, I watered on the 12th. I put a little more nitrogen on the 13th. 14th, I just water. 15th, I reassess. And both times I've had to go 15 days, it was ready on the 15th day. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt if you go a little longer and you put some more fertilizer in it. You just want to keep an eye on it. Like I said, you can stick your meat thermometer in there, and if it's 80 to 100 degrees, you're okay. If it's over that, back off, water it real well, and wait a day or two. But as I said, the mushrooms are my sign. And they're real obvious. You'll come out in the morning and go, oh, it's ready. It's ready.
Where do they come from? Mushrooms. Is it in
There's
the?
fungus everywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Fungus among us
I've
everywhere.
got the same in my dirt gardens, the
Yeah.
little mushrooms, and they're good.
Yeah.
It's a good sign, your
Yes,
soil's good.
it means your soil is healthy.